The chamber of the Galactic Council was a monument to peace, or so its architects had intended. Carved from the obsidian heart of a dead moon, its walls curved inward like cupped hands, designed to hold the voices of 500 civilizations without letting a single one drown out another. High Chancellor Zareth of the Velhari stood at the central dais, his 4 translucent wings folded tight against his back, his compound eyes scanning the assembled delegates with the practiced calm of a creature who had governed the known galaxy for 600 years. He had never been afraid of a species before. Until today. The crisis had begun 43 hours ago, at least, that was when the Council learned of it. In truth, it had begun 6 days prior, when the Kreth Dominion dispatched its 3rd Annihilation Fleet toward a small, unremarkable star system on the outer spiral. The system's name in galactic standard was barely a designation, Sector 7G, single yellow star, for rocky planets, 1 inhabited. Earth's solar system. The Kreth had done the math. Humanity had been a spacefaring civilization for only 60 years. They possessed 12 warships, actual warships, not converted freighters, and a combined military population of roughly 40 million. The Kreth Third Fleet numbered 3,000 vessels and carried a warrior caste of 4 billion. They had annihilated 11 civilizations before. The math was the math. What the Kreth had not done was study history. High Chancellor Zareth received the distress beacon from the human ambassador, a young woman named Counselor Mira Ohen, with the detached sympathy of someone attending a funeral for people he had never met. He issued the standard condolences. He convened an emergency session. He composed a strongly worded diplomatic censure against the Kreth, which everyone knew would arrive approximately 6 weeks after humanity ceased to exist. Then Admiral Darian Voss opened a channel to the council chambers. He was not what Zareth expected. Human military commanders in the databases were photographed in crisp uniforms, standing rigid, performing the theater of authority. Voss was standing in what appeared to be a dimly lit combat operations center, his uniform jacket missing entirely, his sleeves rolled to the elbow, a dark stain on his collar that Zareth suspected was not ink. He looked, and here the Chancellor's translation implant struggled, tired but awake in a way that sleep could not fix. "Chancellor," Voss said, without preamble. "I'm transmitting a full tactical update. As of 4 hours ago, we engaged the Kreth advance elements at the Neptune perimeter. I want the Council to understand the current situation." "Admiral Voss," Zareth replied gently, "the Council is deeply sympathetic to humanity's position. However, the tactical reality?" "Sir." Voss's voice did not rise. It settled, the way a mountain settles, downward, with enormous weight. "With respect, I'm not calling for sympathy. I'm calling to inform you that we need the shipping lanes through Council's pace kept clear for the next 72 hours. We're going to be moving fast and we don't want to accidentally destroy anyone's freighter." Silence fell across the chamber. 500 delegates turned their various sensory organs toward the human face on the screen. "Admiral," said the Velhari Chancellor slowly, "you are facing 3,000 vessels." "Yes, sir." Voss glanced off-screen for a moment, receiving something from a crew member. "Correction, 2,912, now. We destroyed 88 in the initial engagement." He looked back at the screen. "We lost 1 ship." The delegate from the Foreign Collective, a species with 17 redundant brains that prided itself on never experiencing surprise, experienced surprise. "1?" Zareth said. "The Steadfast. Good crew." Something moved across Voss's face, not grief, exactly, but something older and quieter. "We won't forget them. But I need those lanes clear, Chancellor, because we're about to stop being subtle." The Council did not clear the lanes because they believed Voss. They cleared the lanes because something in his voice made them unwilling to be in the way. What followed was broadcast across 43 receiving stations, recorded by 17 independent observer craft, and would later be studied at military academies across the galaxy for the next 3 centuries. Humanity had spent 60 years in space. In that time, they had never fought a real war off their own world. Every galactic power had quietly assumed this meant they were inexperienced. No one had considered the alternative interpretation, that humanity had spent 60 years preparing. Admiral Darian Voss had not brought 12 warships to the Neptune engagement. He had brought 12 visible warships. The Kreth Third Fleet, on its long and arrogant approach, had sailed directly through a debris field that humans had been meticulously seeding for 4 years, a field of autonomous munitions, of listening posts, of magnetic disruption nodes that had been cataloging Kreth shield frequencies since the first Dominion scout crossed into the outer system 18 months ago. Every piece of Kreth technology had been studied and mapped, and handed to human engineers who had one singular cultural trait the Kreth had entirely failed to anticipate. Humans, when faced with a problem that might kill them, do not rest. They had not slept properly in 18 months. They had worked in shifts, in stations, on problems that prior galactic wisdom said could not be solved in under a decade. They had solved them in 14 months and spent the remaining 4 building the weapons. The battle, if a battle was the right word for it, lasted 9 hours. The Kreth lost contact with their fleet in sections, like lights going out across a city. First the outer wings, cut off by coordinated strikes from ships that appeared from inside asteroid clusters where no ship should have been able to hide. Then the command core, hit with a weapon the Kreth had no name for, a focused electromagnetic cascade that their shields had been specifically calibrated to be vulnerable to. The Kreth flagship, the Dominion's Eternal Fist, attempted to broadcast a request for terms at hour 7. Admiral Voss, sitting in his command chair, jaw set, eyes like a man who had not blinked in days, looked at the message and said, "Tell them they have 40 minutes to begin withdrawing. After that, we stop accepting surrenders." They began withdrawing in 31 minutes. When it was over, Voss returned to the Council channel. He looked, if anything, worse, hollowed out and brutally calm, the way a predator looks after it has run very far and very fast and caught the thing it was chasing. "Chancellor," he said, "the Kreth Third Fleet has been neutralized. We have transmitted full records to the Council archive. I'd ask that you circulate them to any civilization currently in negotiations with the Kreth Dominion." Zareth stared at the human for a long moment. Around him, the chamber was utterly silent. "Admiral Voss," he said at last. "You destroyed 3,000 ships." 2,912, Voss corrected, with something that was not quite a smile. "We also recovered 46 Kreth vessels intact for study. I'll be honest with you, Chancellor. We learned a lot about their technology in those 14 months. We're going to learn more now." He paused. "We have a saying on Earth. Know your enemy. We took it seriously." "You took it seriously," Zareth repeated. He looked across the chamber, at 500 delegates from 500 civilizations, all of them very still. "Admiral. A question, if I may." "Sir." "How long," the High Chancellor said carefully, "have you been planning for this?" Darian Voss looked at him. Not with arrogance. Not with the swagger of a man who had one. With something more unsettling, the level, honest gaze of a creature that had spent its entire history surrounded by things that wanted to eat it, and had responded by becoming very, very good at the alternative. "Chancellor," he said, "we have been planning for this since before we had words." The chamber was quiet for a long time after the channel closed. High Chancellor Zareth stood at the dais and thought about Earth, that small, unremarkable planet in Sector 7G, circling its yellow sun. He thought about the 60 years humanity had spent in space, smiling and trading and signing treaties, attending council sessions, offering aid packages, making friends. Building weapons. Mapping vulnerabilities. Preparing. He thought about what it meant to evolve on a world where every niche was contested, where the apex predator was challenged from below by creatures with claws and from above by storms and ice and fire. He thought about what 60 million years of that pressure produced, not a creature that was the strongest, or the fastest, or the most armored. A creature that planned ahead. He turned to the foreign delegate. I recommend, Zareth said quietly, that we update the Council's standard diplomatic protocols for humanity. What classification? The delegate asked. The High Chancellor of the Galactic Council, who had governed 500 civilizations and feared none of them, considered the image of Admiral Darian Voss, exhausted, bloodless, calm, and said, "Protected ally. And under no circumstances, enemy." Far out on the edge of the solar system, aboard the human flagship Indomitable, Admiral Darian Voss poured himself a cup of coffee, sat down in his command chair, and began reading the engineering reports on the captured Kreth vessels. He was already thinking about next time.